Kellen Moore's got his guy, and the New Orleans Saints are doing something I didn't think they would. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're breaking down the rest of the New Orleans Saints draft so far, all throughout day 3. We'll get into how Jonas Sanker could potentially become a starter for this team, Vernon, Broughton, and what it is that he brings to this team as well. And we're going to lead everything off with Kellen Moore getting his guy in Louisville quarterback Tyler Shuck, and the New Orleans Saints doing something I didn't think that they would do. We got all that and much more for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being it every day or here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs was to help you find the quality candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. And here to help me break all of it down tonight as we look back at day 3 is our good friend Dylan Sanders. Yes,
yeah, my phone's busy, but I wanted to keep the bit going.
I love it. Dylan Sanders, host of the Saints Squad, which features Dylan, myself, our good friend John Hendricks of New Orleans Football, as well as Lance Moore, former NFL wide receiver, former New Orleans Saints wide receiver. You can also catch all of his great work as a contributor over at Saints Wire and Tulane on SI. Dylan, I have a couple of things that I really wanted to kind of like get out here. Like we're at post day 2, and I think the New Orleans Saints draft class has done a couple of different things that I think are interesting. I want to stay with Tyler Shuck because it's the biggest story around the Saints draft so far. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me around Tyler Shuck is that he is clearly Kellen Moore's guy. We spoke with Kellen Moore after day 3 and sort of the post-draft press conference, and you could just kind of feel the way that he lit up about him. Did you see the video of when he like called to tell him the pick?
Yeah.
He looked like a kid at Christmas. You know what I mean? Like Kellen Moore looked very excited to make that phone call.
He looks very excited to be like a head coach in the NFL. It's been a nice reprieve. Like there's always all this drama around every move the Saints make. But you go and you watch the pressers, and Kellen Moore has a smile on his face. He's excited about what he gets to do with these players. And you go, oh, man, maybe it'll all be all right.
maybe everything's going to be okay after all. It was much better than like DA, who was like constantly miserable. I think the thing that you look at with this Tyler Shuck thing is, like we discussed earlier, like there's no guarantee when you're the number 40 overall selection in the second round that you're going to be the starting quarterback for this franchise. But when you're the team's first ever second round quarterback and first or second round quarterback, most highly drafted quarterback since 1971 in Archie Manning, that certainly gives you some idea of where things are going to go. And you talk to Kellen Moore, and he was telling us about how, like, I asked him, it's easy to see like kind of the physical stuff, but as somebody that's been there and done that before, as Kellen Moore has been as a quarterback in college, as well as a quarterback in the NFL, what are some of the things that stand out to you in his game that maybe don't show up, that everybody would notice? And he started talking about like him having a lot of responsibilities in Louisville. He had a lot of responsibilities at the line of scrimmage, making checks, maybe changing plays, getting in and out of checks as well, IDing stuff, all that. And you can kind of just hear him get into like his football pocket when he did that. And you could tell that like Kellen Moore thinks he can cook with Tyler Shuck, man. Like that's the way that I kind of walked away feeling that. Now, would I say that like fans shouldn't be skeptical? No, absolutely you should be, because none of it matters until he's on the field and productive, right? But I think that like when you hear and when you see what it is that at least Kellen Moore is getting, it's so clear that this is Kellen Moore's guy.
Yeah. I think that, again, more and more, because maybe it's just because I don't love the pick, but I have been thinking about what does it mean outside of the player? Take the player's name off of the back. And another thing that we haven't talked about that I think that this is a great start to this new regime in that Mickey Loomis is like, hey, Kate Kellen, I'm going to take the first quarterback in the second round of 20 years. I'm going to let you get your guy. I'm not going to make you play with, the old regime's toys. You're going to get your guy. I'm going to invest in you, in your future, and your vision. And that is, I think, a great start to this relationship between GM and head coach.
Yeah, I think so too. And we'll see. I mean, like, I got to tell you, I'm not the biggest fan of the selection either, but it's just a lot of that just comes down to we haven't seen anything yet. You know what I mean? And look, what we have seen of Tyler Shuck was like not great, injury prone, all of that for the first few years. Then he had this really great year at Louisville last season, and then you have to wonder, is what he did in 2024 his ceiling, or is it just part of the progression? And so when you land on a coaching staff of Kellen Moore, former quarterback, Doug Nussmeier, former quarterback, Scott Tolzien, former quarterback, Scott Linehan, who worked with a whole bunch of different quarterbacks and all that, do you have the opportunity to be able to continue to develop him? I don't know. Like I'm going to be honest. Like I don't look at this pick and go, well, Tyler Shuck is going to be this, because we don't know. We have no idea. I have an idea of where it might go based on his age, based on his injury history, based on his panicking under pressure, all those other things. Like that stuff that doesn't just go away. Like that stuff doesn't change. And so like, I understand the concern big time. I would have my own concerns there too. But for New Orleans, I think this represents such a big changing of the guard for them that like, I think you would take that as a fan to see that they're actually trying something different. That they never tried with Sean Payton, that they never tried with Dennis Allen, they never tried with Mickey Loomis before. This isn't status quo anymore in terms of what this team is doing, it doesn't feel like.
Yeah, and again, I mean, some people are like, well, some people will be like, man, the player is at the similar level of what they've taken in the past. It's just a different round. But I do think that that's a big signifier change. I think that's a big change signifier. And again, I don't think that the injuries are as big of a deal as they seem. I mean, 3 season-ending injuries is bad, but they were clean breaks. It wasn't like cartilage damage. He didn't have to have he didn't have to have crazy surgery that lingers. They look more like bad luck than like bad genetics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and to some points here, like a lot of that, like one of those was like a hip drop tackle that cost him his season and stuff like that, as is highlighted. And so I think
the second shoulder injury was because they didn't have surgery, so it didn't heal correctly.
Right.
So that made it prone. Then they did get that fixed, and then it hasn't come back since then.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I think that, and to your point earlier, what I do like about this pick again is that it does feel like at least Kellen Moore and this staff doesn't think that this last year was his ceiling.
Right. Otherwise you wouldn't take it.
Yeah. There was this big, one of my favorite quotes of the press was about, he was able to go through the adversity and build momentum with this year. And if you can, I mean, the last year of his college career was very impressive in the ACC. So if he's able to take that and then build upon that starting year one, I think it'll look like a better pick down the road than it does right now.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the thing with this draft class as a whole. One of the things that I had a couple of predictions. I had the prediction that they wouldn't take a quarterback in the first round, that they would take Calvin Banks in the first round, that they wouldn't take Shedeur Sanders at all. And then the other prediction that I had was that all of the draft grades are going to be C's, D's, or F's by all the analysts. And all that really matters is what happens 3 years down the road from now. And I think that that's what the New Orleans Saints are playing for. Here's what I want to go to next. This draft class is boring. I'm going to tell you why as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is supposed to help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. And they do it for you in a way that nobody else will, with this expansive network and a bunch of different tools like the Post Your Job tool that allows you to be able to build out what it is that you're looking for. It even helps you write job descriptions, things like that. Share it to your network and start to bring in some of those highly qualified candidates that 72% of small business owners love LinkedIn for, because of those high quality hires that they end up receiving. It's an excellent thing over at LinkedIn Jobs. I've used LinkedIn before to find jobs, never to post for jobs, but as easy as it was to find what it was that I was looking for, line up dream jobs, things like that. That's how easy it could be for you to have your job fall in the hands of the right person over at LinkedIn Jobs. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, family. This draft class, Dylan, is boring. It's a boring draft class.
Loser. I fell asleep watching the picks get announced. I mean, I need to go get that checked out. But
yeah, you might want to go and get checked out. But here's the thing. I think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be a boring draft class. Yeah. I have three theories about this draft class. The first of which is that it's boring, and that it's supposed to be. The second of which is that this is a draft class, Dylan, that ends up putting the New Orleans Saints in a situation in which they are building the house by first putting up all of the braces, putting up all the support, putting up the weight-bearing beams. They're putting in all the studs, but they're not doing any decorating yet because there's no walls up.
Yeah.
And the last thing for me is that this draft class is a silent acknowledgement of a rebuild, if you ask me. That's what I think about this draft.
I think so too. I think that it is. And again, we were talking about it earlier, like the contract situation, and people are like, wow, they're doing it again. They're really going all in again for another year. But I think that they're doing right now, what they're doing right now is trying to keep them afloat with the veterans on the roster, seeing if they can win games, while also being like, all right, we're going to get a guy that is going to be our left tackle for down the road. We're going to get a defensive back that can play around. We're going to get a run stopper in the middle. We're going to get maybe a quarterback. Like, it's not the sexy picks. It's not the picks that are going to be you're going to be sitting at home smiling, watching highlight packages. I mean, unless you're a freakazoid like me and you're like, wow, Vernon Broughton, he gets up in there. But in a couple of years, if these guys are still starting for the Saints in 3 seasons, no one's going to care that they had a boring draft a couple of years ago. So I think it's a solid settling. It's see how it works, but it's fine. It's boring, but fine.
Yeah, I think it's true that these 9 selections and next year's however many selections they make are almost like one draft class. 2025 and 2026 will be kind of its own draft class. Just like how I'm not looking at the New Orleans Saints 2025 season as a 17-game season. I'm looking at 2025, 2026. So it's like a 34-game season because I think that that's how long this process goes. But I think that the thing that I look at is the ability to be able to say, okay, you've got that left tackle of the future, like you acknowledge. You've got that new defensive line presence to help erase some of the run game mistakes that you had. Put you in position to move on from last regime's defensive interior, right? They brought in Jonah Williams. They traded for Devon Godshaw, got both those guys on contracts. You've got Devon Godshaw on a 2-year deal. You end up drafting Vernon Broughton, who comes in from Texas, big body guy, 6'5", 3'11", 6'5", 311 pounds. My apologies. And plays a 3'11" defensive tackle. You're cooked. But 311 pounds, can play anywhere from like 2I, which is shading over that outside shoulder or that inside shoulder of the guard, all the way out to 9 outside the tight end. And so just does a whole bunch of stuff there. So it gives you an opportunity to be able to rebuild the regime in the trenches. Exactly what it is that Kellen Moore said he was going to do, build from the inside out. Check. You get a guy like Jonas Sanker who helps you maybe have your succession plan at a safety in Tyrann Mathieu, who's probably around for one more year. And last year was being asked to play around the line of scrimmage way too much. And so now you go and get a guy that can actually play near the line of scrimmage, kind of a la Will Harris from last year, who was being asked to cover way too much. And so you get away from the abuse of defensive players by playing them out of position. Zach Bond, Isaiah Foskey, Peyton Turner, all these other guys, Caden Ellis, all these guys that have been asked to do that. Alante Taylor getting moved around all over the place. So, okay, you check that box. And then you get the quarterback that allows you to be able to get last regime's quarterback up out of the building. Like, if there's anything for Saints fans to be excited about in this situation, is that the draft selection of Tyler Shuck effectively stamps, as we discussed earlier, the end of the Derek Carr era. And I know a lot of New Orleans Saints fans want that. And so this gets you a place closer to that. I still think that Spencer Rattler will continue to be a part of the conversation. But for the next year or 2 years, you're looking at these young guys on rookie contracts. You're not looking at the veteran quarterback that's not a part of your future one way or another, who's in the twilight of his career anymore. And so I think that that's the thing to where, like, yeah, this is a boring draft class so far, 4 picks through 9. So there's still 5 selections coming up. But I think that this is the boring part of it is the necessary part of it, from a team that's acknowledging silently, but acknowledging where they are, which is that they're not in position to make big flashy picks. They're in position to rebuild their foundation. And I think that's what they've started doing so far. We'll see what they're able to do in day 3 to maybe help to build off of that.
And I think that the people that are upset, myself, have been upset at times, myself included, with the lack of like the explosiveness in this draft class. It was a bit of our own doing, because the Saints never lie. The Saints, if you've listened, the Saints have said, hey, we're going to build from the inside out. You know what that means? Boring players. Get in the trenches, getting a new quarterback, which, I guess isn't always a boring pick. It's just like people didn't like the player that they took.
Right.
But it does mean these boring picks that are going to lay the foundation. That's what we've said a couple times now, and I think that's really what this is, and that's what they've been saying they were gonna do. So at least they stick to their word.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes down to like their ability to be able to build stuff up over the course of the next couple of years, or over the course of the next couple of picks, like big-bodied wide receivers, like Alec Ayumanner out of Stanford, a guy that you and I both had in our kind of like dream scenario mocks. You had him in the 2nd round. I had him in the 3rd round. Well, now he's still available as the 4th round begins. Everything like that. And so, like, right. So there's like still these players, a guy like DJ Giddens, who I had in the 3rd round, still available in the 4th round. Like, there's still these players that do have the ability to be able to kind of help you, do the things that are a little bit more entertaining. I expect that the Saints moving forward now will go to maybe some more of those skill position spots. Gunnar Helm, the big Texas tight end. Bring in a trio of the Texas players if you need to. You know what I mean? Like,
you already did it with the coaches.
Right. Like, yeah, 100%.
Everyone talking about this being the new age, the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. They went Georgia. Now you go Texas.
You go Texas, the other SEC team.
Right. And so, like, I don't know. I feel very much like there is still the opportunity to now start to execute excitement. Although I wouldn't be surprised if you see another offensive lineman in this year's draft. There's still edge rushers that I think could end up coming in and contributing. You know what I mean? Like Baron Sorrell still out there from Texas. Oh, right. That's another Texas player. Isn't Braden Swinson still available from LSU, right?
He's still he's still available. And that's a guy I have again championed in the 2nd round. I guess I'm too high on these guys. But again, that's this draft class. You have these teams have had their guys and they've taken them. I think that's the best thing about this Saints draft class, is that they got all of these players that they're very clearly high on, but they did not mortgage any of their future to get them. They just let them come to them, and then they took them. And I think that's the best case scenario for a boring draft class, is like, well, we know what we need to draft, but we're not going to give up too much to be able to do that. There's just how it falls is how it falls, and that's how it has fell.
Yeah, 100%. That's how it fell. They're gonna walk into Sunday with picks 112 and 131 in the 4th round. They've got no picks in the 5th. They've got pick 184 in the 6th round, and they've got a pair of 7th round selections. I think really the thing that you need to maximize here are picks 112 and 131. Or maybe you package 131 and 184 in order to move up, right? Like you got to take advantage of this 4th round for me. I was a big proponent of the idea that like day 2 was going to be the day where the draft was either made or broken for the New Orleans Saints. I still believe that. The success of these 3 players that were taken today on Friday, Tyler Shuck, Vernon Broughton, as well as Jonas Sanker, who we're going to break down here in just a second. The success of those 3 guys is going to be telling in terms of how this draft class is looked back on 3 years from now. So we have to have patience to kind of figure out what all that is. But I understand right now fans looking at this and going, wow, this is not what I expected with all of these like electrifying players and big time playmakers and all this stuff on the board. I think there's so much more about the players that weren't taken that is influencing opinion, myself included, than the players that actually were. So we'll see where things go. But I want to focus on the players that actually were taken, Dylan. So next up, let's dive into 2 guys that could become immediate contributors to this team, depending on what roles they're asked to play and if those roles actually make sense in this new defense. We're going to get to that next. We continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here. And what that means is that FanDuel is giving you everything that you need as a new customer to get in on all of the action. For instance, if you head over to FanDuel today and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. So go and find a heavy favorite in the NBA playoffs. Put your first $5 down on the money line of that game. If you win, $250 in bonus bets that you can then use for prop bets like 3-pointers made, assists, steals, rebounds, blocks, whatever it is that you want to dive into. You'd also get into things like just simply betting for your favorite team, live bets, which are some of my favorites. I love like quarter bets and stuff like that during football games, during basketball games, all those kinds of things. And then, of course, same game parlays to try to win a major payout as well. So head over to FanDuel.com so that you can start your chance at $250 in bonus bets today. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation? The New Orleans Saints wrap up day 3 of the NFL draft with, of course, Tyler Shuck, who we've discussed a little bit earlier on here in the show. Kellen Moore getting his guy at quarterback. But then they followed up by going over to the defensive side after focusing on offense early. They go offensive line, quarterback to start. Then they go defensive tackle, Vernon Broughton out of Texas. And then safety, Jonas, not Jonas, Jonas Sanker out of Virginia. I think let's start with Sanker because I feel like he's the guy, if you ask me, that maybe has the biggest opportunity right away to have a pretty major impact over on this defense and playing himself into actually a pretty solid role that I don't think people are expecting right
away. I think he's a quarterback that is super versatile, a cornerback, defensive back that is super versatile and can play 3 different ways. He's played at least 500 snaps in college for 3 different secondary positions. And then he had 205 tackles over his last 2 college seasons as a safety. That's crazy. And so I think that he is this downhill thumper in the Brandon Staley defense in the secondary. And I think that he is going to be a fantastic addition immediately in the run game. And then he also has some solid, he's better in man than he is zone right now, but I think he has some solid coverage ability. And I just think that he is this kind of chess piece that is going to be moved around and utilized from day one in Staley's defense.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, I think that he is that interesting fit, 6 foot, 200 and just over 200 pounds. He kind of comes in with this really good tackling ability, also really good instincts. That was one of the things that Kellen Moore immediately ended up kind of, crediting when it came to highlighting what it is that he does well. Similarly, he credited like the play style and everything like that. I think the tackling for me, as you highlighted, Dylan, is the big highlight for me, because one of the biggest thorns in the New Orleans Saints side last year was their inability to tackle. in games. Like, and you saw that from the safety position. And here's the thing about the safety position. If you miss a tackle at the safety position, it's bad news for your defense because you're typically the last line of defense at that point. You're typically the last man standing. And so you've got to make sure that you make that team take another snap at safety. And that's one of the things that I like about Sanker is that he is a tackling machine, always finds his way around the ball, always gets in. I think there's a role for him to have a bigger impact than I think people are expecting, because you're going to see, and Alontae Taylor talked about this, he's been watching all of the Jalen Ramsey tape from when Jalen Ramsey was a corner under Brandon Staley as a defensive coordinator over in Los Angeles. And he expects himself to be in that role where he plays outside a little bit, plays inside a little bit, and kind of moves around playing sort of that blend of like safety, corner, nickel corner, just kind of blending all around there. And I think that in situations where he moves outside, but then you want to have your base defense on, and you want to make sure you have one of your best tacklers at safety on the field, Sanker's probably on the field before Tyrann Mathieu is at this point. And I don't think that that's necessarily the bad way to go. Let Tyrann do what it is that he does well, which is cover the middle of the field and be that like robber that can come in underneath and take away some of those crossing patterns, things like that. But then if you can elevate Sanker to a point where he's rotating in on those rundowns, move Alontae Taylor to the outside, then bang, you've got three solid run defensive backs that are on the field for you, along with your 3-4 or 4-3 front. And I don't think that, or I guess that would be 3-3 or 4-2 front in that case. And I don't think that that's a bad situation for them.
No, I think that this is the most fun pick of the draft so far.
Sure, yeah.
He's going to be a playmaker on defense, whether it is, in the pass game, or I think especially in the run game early on. He is, I can't imagine being a run game that's, trying to go into the outside with Alontae Taylor and Justin Reed and Jonas Sanker. Yeah. I think the Justin Reed pick makes this especially great. This is a really strong secondary again, at least in the latter half. The safety room went from being, a weakness last year, frankly, to now being, I think, maybe the best part of the secondary right now.
Yeah, it might be one of the strongest positions on the team right now.
Yeah,
if we're being honest, right? Because so much of it is still holdover from last season. Now all of a sudden you've got so many new faces at safety that like, oh, okay, there might be an opportunity here to actually see some improvement there, and I think that they're in a good position for that. I think the other thing that's really interesting about that too is like for Brandon Staley, you want to have those aggressive safeties that can crash down. Like when you run those cover 6 looks where you've got cover 2 on one side of the field and cover 4 on the other side of the field, or you're in those cover 4 looks where you're dropping four defensive backs deep to cover those different fourths of the field. You need those safeties that are going to be quick twitch and instinctive to be able to come and crash down and make plays, supporting in the run game, but also being able to come down underneath and make plays on crossing patterns and things like that. Kellen Moore, an absolute master at dialing up those crossing patterns. We saw it eat the New Orleans Saints alive last year with the Philadelphia Eagles came to town, big catch and runs by Dallas Goedert, all that kind of stuff. And so the Saints are going to have to practice against that. And they're going to be able to, with Brandon Staley, learn how to counteract that. And I think players like Sanker help you be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that, maybe switching over to Broughton a little bit, this is kind of the, stalwart of the middle of the defense. You have Brian Bresee, who has shined as a pass rusher. He led the team in sacks last year up the middle. You now have this guy who's 6'5", 315 or whatever. He's massive to be next to him and play that one tech in this defense, again, from day one. These are day one picks that are also future, for the next 4 years. They're going to be playing a lot of football. And I think that
when you say day one picks, you mean like week one start?
Week one start. That's sorry. I forgot. That's what they call the draft. But Broughton is a really, really fun player at defensive tackle because the needle wasn't moved for me by the Devon Godshaw trade. I think that they still very much needed another pickup there. And I think Broughton, where they were drafting, was about the best player they could get. Plus you have Bo Davis on the staff. That's a guy that knows him and very clearly trusts him. And yeah, I think bring on the Longhorns, the New Orleans Longhorns.
And look, he sat behind guys like Tavondre Sweat and others that ended up, moving on to the NFL and everything. And he didn't move into a starting role until last year. Another situation where you're seeing developmental momentum coming out of the final year of college and then now into the NFL, which I think that there is an opportunity to be able to do all that. So, he's an interesting guy, man. He played AAU basketball, and basketball was kind of his first sport, and then transitioned over to football and like loves football, but still has some of that like athleticism that's a part of being a basketball player. Like he moves a little bit better than you expect him to move at 6'5", 311, kind of reminiscent of Brian Brzee, but maybe a little bit different. When the Saints traded for Devon Godchaux, all of the reports that came out were like, oh, they've got their nose tackle, they've got their nose tackle, they got their nose tackle. But then you go and you watch his tape and he plays 3-4 defensive end like most of the time. Like there were some times where he moved and he was that kind of nose tackle and everything like that. So I wonder how much like the Broughton draft pick here maybe gives him an opportunity to develop as a nose tackle, but play scheme versatile, move around and all that other stuff. So when they're in a 4-man front, he's doing one thing. When they're in a 3-man front, he's doing a different thing. When they're in a 5-man front, he's doing a different thing, right? When they're a 6-man front, he's doing a different thing. And so however it is that they're doing all these things, like he's able to move around a bit, but then maybe that opens up Devon Godchaux to be able to be that 3-4 defensive end, one of those 3-4 defensive ends, as opposed to being the nose tackle. And maybe it does the same thing with Brian Brzee, which could be really fun if you ask me. But I think you still need to be able to get those speed stand-up edge rushers on the outside that I don't think they have right now. That's got to be the next thing that I'm looking for.
Yeah. What I do think that I think both of these defensive picks do is I think one of the problems from last year's team is that it really felt like, shout out to Craig Robertson, they were missing those dogs. And so if, Broughton and Sanker come in, they're the, high energy Broughton, if he can play hard as Shuck, he is going to be a great chess piece on this defensive line. But again, like you mentioned, I still would like to see them add a pass rusher. I'll stand on the table for Braden Swinson in the 4th round just because I still think that he has a lot to give. He's, similar to Shuck in that he didn't really break out until that last year of college. So maybe that's not something that scares them away. He's someone that built a lot of momentum. And so even if it's not Swinson, I just do think that they are still needing that stand-up edge rusher.
Yeah, I think you still need that guy too. Absolutely, 100%. I don't think you can leave this draft without that guy. I think that would be malpractice if you leave the draft without somebody that fits that role. So we'll see. Is it malpractice? Is it not? We'll figure it out. All right. We will be back tomorrow after all of the selections are in for day 3, because day 3 moves a little fast. We get undrafted free agency after that and all those other things. So if you want to keep up with all that, make sure you're following on socials, at Dilly Sanders, at Ross Jackson Nola. If you want to, you can join the Locked On Saints Insider program as well. Get some advanced information there all throughout the draft. We've been having a good time with that. You can do that by texting Who Dat to 504-285-7473 or clicking the link in the description to make sure you come back. We'll have more episodes here all throughout. Saint Squad, next Saint Squad episode will be Monday morning at 8 a.m. Really appreciate you very much, as always, for being here with us. For Dylan Sanders, I am Ross Jackson. We thank you for tuning in, especially here so late, whether you're catching the show live or catching it later. We appreciate you making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to us and the show. As always, if you need anything around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow us on your favorite social media. Hit us up. Let us know how the family's doing. Let us know how you're living. Let us know how your mom and them. And trust Who Dat Nation. We'll holla at you.